Hello and welcome to Twist Grip Tales, and have we got a tale for you. This is a VJ21, which may not mean anything to you, but it does to this young fella. Welcome, Aaron, to Twist Grip Tales.
Thank you.
Now, what is this machine?
This is a 1988 Suzuki RGV, and it's the VJ21 model.
And this machine was part of a very interesting production racing period in motorcycling history. Back through the 70s, all the Japanese manufacturers came out with parallel twin cylinder.
Yep.
So the pistons and that ran side by side. Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki, Kawasaki. But then in the late 80s, something happened in production racing, and there was a lot going on the MotoGP scene.
Yes.
Square fours.
Yep.
Honda had V3s.
Yep.
There were lots of stuff. And then suddenly a production class opened up, which allowed this sort of thing to come up. So Suzuki had previously a sports two-stroke, which was a parallel twin called the Gamma.
Yes. Yep.
And then in 87, this was the first model of the V-twin two-stroke. Kawasaki had a parallel, an inline twin, one cylinder behind the other.
Yep.
Honda had a V-twin, which was a sister bike to the V3. And it was a very interesting time on the track because unlike the normal bikes, the parallel twins, these machines were racetrack tuned. Previous bikes had about 40 horsepower. How much horsepower did these ones produce?
48, I think.
Yes. And I think if you look online, you'll find that by the time the Series 3 came out, these were punching 70 horsepower.
Yep.
70 horsepower on a machine that weighs 125, 130 kilos.
Yep. It's fast.
These are really, really cool. These are boy racers. These are amazing.
Yeah, they were.
So let's go through and look at the features of this bike. Aaron, point out to us what makes this bike special.
Well, what makes these bikes special is they're obviously two-stroke with a power band. And with the horsepower and the weight, they were quite deadly on the street. A lot of young guys bought these bikes, obviously, because what they looked like, the liveries that they had, they looked quite sporty. They wanted that Grand Prix look. So young guys would buy these bikes, and in the wrong hands they were quite dangerous. So a lot of these bikes, obviously, they got scratched, dented, dropped, slid off the road, and sometimes worse. They were a proper widow maker, and a lot of people lost their lives on them or ended up bent.
So this bike of yours was a bare frame restoration.
So I bought this. This was a Gumtree find about 5-6 years ago. It sat around for a year, and then I decided the time is to do a full restoration. So I went back straight to a bare frame, detailed the frame, then every single piece that went on the bike was detailed, replaced, painted, replated, everything that it needed to become the bike that I want it to be.
So to achieve 130 kilos, Suzuki went to a lot of trouble.
Yep.
In this, their first model. It's got really good quality front forks.
Yep, they're still a conventional fork. The SP, this isn't an SP, but the SP model, they did have a bit of extra valving on the bottom, which a lot of the Japanese models had that. This one doesn't. But yeah, they had the aluminium frame, aluminium swing arm. The aluminium frames were a little bit prone to cracking around the pivot where the swing arm goes on. That was a bit of a common thing with them. So a lot of them had, maybe due to the chains being too tight.
And because these bikes were basically made, and we're very fortunate here in Australia because these were made to produce in the class which was a Japanese and predominantly Asian class. So New Zealand and Australia and a lot of the Asian countries, Malaysia, Singapore, got these bikes first.
Yep.
Top quality products like remote reservoir rear suspension, enormous discs, twin discs on the front. And are they ventilated? No, these ones aren't ventilated, but these are button. These are fully floating,
full floating. Yep.
Full floating discs on the front, twin discs on the front. Aluminium swing arm on the back, and it had the power band kicked in at around about 7.5, 8,000 RPM.
Yep.
And up until 7,500 RPM, how much horsepower do you reckon you had on tap? Maybe
you got a fair bit.
10 or 15.
Yep.
And
then a lot.
then a lot. Then everything.
Then everything all at once.
Yeah. So from 8,000 to 11,000 RPM. In this machine, you've got about 60 horsepower on tap, and up until then, you may as well push it. It's it's not the sort of bike you'd want to ride to work all the time.
No, guys do, and guys did back in the day. They would ride them every day of the week. I had a few friends that rode them every day without too much grief. But yeah, you just had to keep the maintenance up. A lot of them didn't get maintained as well. So a lot of them didn't get the top end rebuilds that they needed. So now when we pick these bikes up, a lot of the cylinders aren't in good order. And they've got the special nickel seal plating on them. So they can be very, very expensive to replace or get replated.
Yep, so, and these are water cooled?
Yes, water cooled two-stroke. Yeah, motorised power valves, which was a bit of a new thing to two-stroke technology then.
So this first model had a two-step power valve, which probably made it a little bit harsher in the delivery of the power. So it went from fully closed to try and give some sort of power down low to
maximum
power at around about 7. It was just a one-step one. In the later models, the VJ22 and 23, I think they went to a three-stage one.
They were a little bit more refined in the cylinders too.
And they made a bit more horsepower. I think they made about, by the time they got to the last model, they'd gained a bit of weight, but the later models had the gull wing
yeah, there was one model that they claimed that Suzuki copied Honda, so there was only like a year that they ran that swing arm, and then they went back to the conventional sort of swing arm. That was a bit of an iconic thing that, yeah, they apparently, they chased Honda with that design. Yeah.
So these are the machines that you could buy across the counter, and in real terms they weren't that expensive compared to other machines. They produce great power to weight, and a lot of people that went on to, a lot of guys and gals that went on to race in top class, cut their teeth in these production racing series, which in fact ended up being run right around the world. So this class of machine was raced in the UK, eventually across Europe and in America as well. And gosh, very, very fast machines. And I think you're allowed to race with slicks in this class also. So these have got, you're saying this is a special model with blinkers that are not usually
Yeah, this
found?
has got the Japanese oval indicators, which is quite hard to find. It's got the SP mirrors with the flutes on here. They're very difficult to find. Yeah, I sort of did a few little modifications the way I wanted it. It wasn't a dead stock concourse bike. It was just, I built a bike. It was going to be just a nice, very clean bike with a couple of little options the way I wanted it. I don't like the Australian indicators that much. And yeah, it's a really nice, clean bike. I put a lot of effort in, and the result's good.
And you're saying that the frame is not painted? That's
no, that's all. It's an anodized frame. Still in quite good order. A lot of these frames used to have a lot of marks in here because of the rattle of the kickstarters become loose. That's a bit of an issue with them. Yeah, so there's a good following of these bikes. There's a lot of good history, and the good thing about these Suzukis is you can still get a lot of parts new.
And they're a good looking bike.
They are. They're a fantastic looking bike. I first saw these bikes when I was probably about 8 years old, and I always wanted one. The Pepsi livery was always something I really liked, and I had to have one.
And you've got Kevin Schwantz, that great Texan racer, to sign the tank here, which is a very nice touch.
Yep.
And the V-twin makes this very, very narrow. In fact, the widest part of this machine, the handlebars and the radiator.
Yep.
The rest of it is such
very
a narrow bike.
Yep. This model's got the quick change gearbox too, which made them a bit easy to work on. You don't have to split the whole cases apart to get the gearbox out. That was a bit of a race thing that they did, so you can work on them.
So that is a very unique and in fact feature that's only found on MotoGP bikes, what they call a cassette type gearbox, where when you take the cover off, you've got the ability to extract all the gears without, as Aaron says, taking the engine apart. So you can change your gear ratios. And this model actually came with a close ratio gearbox.
Yes, close ratio box. The next model, they got a little bit of a dry clutch option. Yeah,
Very sporty,
quite
very
rare.
Very race
there's a lot
featured.
of rare parts that you can get for these bikes too. You know, the SP forks are hard to find. Dry clutches, yeah. And then obviously the next model this has got the side-by-side exhaust, what they call side-by-side, and then the next model had the iconic two exhaust systems up one side, which made them, you know, that was a pretty common thing that people liked back in the day too.
Now this V-twin RGV250 was made for around about 12 years in 3 different models, and then interestingly, after this model ceased to be manufactured by Suzuki, Aprilia managed to get a contract with their two-stroke 250 bikes, which became very, very famous around the world. And Suzuki continued to manufacture this V-twin engine. Aprilia made a few changes themselves. I think they put a different head in it. I think technology had probably moved on a little bit.
Yep.
And but they continued the production run of this engine for probably another 10 years. So this engine, this style of sporty machine, ran for 20 odd years, which is really quite unusual in motorcycle history, to get such a magnificent and really a testament to the original design and the heart and soul of this sporty machine. Now, just looking at the dashboard on this, the instruments on this machine. We do have a tacho in center position, which interestingly starts at 3,000 RPM. Don't even think about moving with less than 3,000 revs, and it redlines at just above 11. So that's 3,000 power band from 8 to 11. On the left, we've got a speedo with very few kilometres on the clock, 13,000 kilometres. And the speedo finishes at 180 kilometres an hour, which is well below the maximum speed of this bike, which is top speed.
Yeah, do about 200.
200, 220, something like that. So I don't know where they got the speedo from.
Yeah, look, there's other speedos too with less kilometres on them. Yeah, you can get ones with 220 on them, but the Australian model had the 180.
Maybe that was to help get the bike road registrable.
Probably, yep.
Yeah. So, and a temperature gauge. And now one of the other features producing power in this is the induction system.
Yep.
So this with a V-twin, this is 2 carburetors.
2 carburetors.
And what are they, 32, 34
32 mil or 34. There's an option on them. This has got the 34s on it.
Okay.
Yep.
The big carbies. And are these what, disc valve, piston port, or reed induction?
These ones have the slide on the cylinder.
So
it's all electronic mechanical. So it's got a motor on it. So as they dial, there's cables that'll actually turn the power valve and then slide in the cylinder.
Yep. On the exhaust port and reed valve induction under the carbies.
Yep.
So that as the pistons come down, the negative pressure in the crankcase draws that lovely great big charge through those huge carburetors into the engine, producing all that power so efficiently as a 2-stroke does. This is a great machine, a real production racer. Well, it's great that someone has rescued a machine and restored it to this quality of restoration, and what an amazing piece of racetrack and road history, road registrable race bikes, fair income race bikes, not far removed from the MotoGP scene. Some of these machines were actually raced in the 250 class, hotted up with factory parts, and ran in the GP and a lot of the European and top class race circuits, and this is a great example of it. Aaron, thank you very much for bringing your machine onto Twist Grip Tales. And if you've got a tale to tell, send us a message and we'll be happy to talk about your project and your tale. Like, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment. What a magnificent machine. I feel like sitting on this thing and riding away. Gosh, what a light machine. Everyone should have one of these. Thanks for watching.